Hello, this is the recordproduction.com interview with Jim Ray. We're at Edwin Street Studios in Bury. When I listen to the stuff that you've worked on, even more conventional things than your own music, sort of less poppy, there's evidence of a really silky smooth.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. I mean, I'm quite into trying to give things their own space. So yeah. I mean, there's records that I've made where I didn't get it right, you know. So I don't think it's a consistent thing across everything I've done. But I suppose I do pay quite a lot of attention to it. I mean, one of my, I don't know, it's hard to think about your own trademark things, but I suppose a thing that I have done quite a lot is trying to make the songs get bigger as they progress. So I suppose something I do quite a lot is start with very dry vocals, and then a few verses in, it starts to retreat into its own space. You know, the delays creep in after a couple of verses. There's a thing I produced for my sister, who's called Jackie Oates, called Past Caring, that does that. And I think if you've got very few instruments, if you've got a very small arrangement, then the reverbs and the delays and the where you place the sounds front to back is quite important, because otherwise it can, you know, you've only got a certain place to go.
Yeah.
If you've got a 15-verse song, this happens in folk music quite often, you've got to have somewhere to go and something to do with it.
And no choruses.
And no choruses, no repeating bits. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, delays and reverbs are quite important. But I mean, the things I use have changed over the years. The Logic tape delay used to be a big favourite of mine.
Because you're a Logic user, aren't you, mate? Mostly,
yeah. Just about still.
Yeah.
And though I think it's getting to the point where if they don't release Logic 10 soon, I'll probably migrate to Pro Tools.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking about it now, because I've been a big defender of Logic for years and argued its corner against in kind of petty arguments. But mainly because I know all of the little foibles of Logic. But there are a couple of things that still really annoy me that need to be addressed in it.
Right.
But then again, I think Pro Tools would annoy me in the same way. But yeah, the Logic tape delay used to be a big thing of mine. The Sound Toys Echo Boy, it's good. I'm a big fan of that. There's a Waves H delay which I use quite a lot.
Yes, that's very good.
But a mixture of those. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've done. It tends to be the tape delay into something else. If you have the tape, or the old records anyway, the tape delay on a send in Logic, I tend to not have it clean. You know, the tape delay coloured by something else, whether that's some modulation. You know, whether that's. I mean, I'm quite big into quite big into panning and things as well, automating pans, and there's a Sound Toys Auto Panner which I use quite heavily on Skulk. So if you set that slowly, so you're, you know, instead of doing a ping pong delay, you're actually moving a mono delay around. Yeah. That's something I do. Oh, that's really, but maybe that's just the way my brain works. Yeah. Make it for thinking of sound.
Because they're very. I mean, I listened to that album and tried to kind of figure out what was happening, and it was tough. And I've never guessed it.
Yeah, it's chains of things. I think that is one thing that maybe doing stuff in the box encourages you to do, is to chain things together, because you're not limited by what you physically have. So a delay into a phaser, into some kind of auto panner, or, you know, automating all the parameters so they're moving, is you know, that's my thing. That's my playground. You know.
Yeah. And do you kind of feel that you should, you know, do people come to you for those sounds, or do you think they come to you for other reasons?
I don't think they do really. I mean, I would like to think that they did. I think people come to me because, I mean, there's. I mean, amongst my generation of folk acts, there's a few people doing all the work basically, and the reason they would come to me rather than Andy Bell that you've interviewed, I think is possibly that when they want something other than just straight recording, when they want a bit of creative input as well, you know. And Andy is a good friend of mine, and is a really incredible engineer and very good at making very sharp images of instruments all in their place, but recording a performance. Yeah. And that's not something I've ever done. So I'd love to do it, but that's possibly not the niche that I've carved myself. The thing I've carved myself is building something up, layer upon layer upon layer. So I think people probably come to me when they want a bit of a turn leftwards, or, you know, they want something a bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
So certainly the record I made with Jackie and the record I made with Belshazzar's Feast
I was just
recently.
Bring that one.
Yeah, because I mean Belshazzar's Feast are an acoustic fiddle and accordion duo basically, fiddle, accordion and one vocal. And there was quite a lot of soundscape stuff that we did on that I don't think they've ever done before.
Yeah. There was drums and guitar in the first track.
But the drums I didn't record. The drums were a bit of an afterthought because they wanted to put them on. So that was Pete Flood from Bellowhead tracked them himself and sent me the files.
Right.
So the drums for me were I got 12 channels of percussion sent.
Yeah.
I think he did them all discreetly. He did a kick drum in one pass and then a snare drum in another pass, then hi-hats in another pass. So it was mainly playing the mutes and fading it in and out. But we did a lot of soundscape stuff with fiddles and oboes and long reverbs and delays and stuff on that record. So that's probably the thing that I do for other people.
That's not true to their live act. There's a lot of interesting.
But then again, they have been around for probably nearly 20 years and they've made a lot of all acoustic albums. They've made a lot of albums that were done in a day. Write the material, rehearse the material, go and record it as live and put it out.
Right.
So I think it was time for them to do something different, really.
More kind of structured.
And then also the Wheeler Street record I did, who were a kind of young folk rock band. That was all about being. That was all about being the person who says yes or no. Really, they had all the ideas and they did it, and they just wanted somebody to say that's good, that's the path to follow, or that's not.
Right.
But I suppose people don't really come to me if they want recording, if they want their live act recorded.
Yeah.
That's not the thing that I do. Though I'd love to do it if anybody's listening.
More.
Yeah.
We talked about click tracks and it's in a way it's not really a done thing in folk necessarily to work to a click. But you
nearly everything I ever do is done to a click.
You were saying about Skulk, the way you did acoustic guitar tracks and then
I've got into doing that recently. I mean, nearly everything I've ever done has been done to a click because I don't tend to play it all in one go. My own records are done layer by layer with me playing something and then doing it again, so you have to. But in fact, it started with Jackie's record. We had Alistair Roberts in to play some guitar, and Alistair doesn't like working to clicks, and I probably wouldn't be able to even if you could, it would cramp his style a bit. So we had Alistair playing guitar, and then I went through and mapped it, and it was about the time I discovered elastic time, flex time, elastic time. So the thing to do, I found, is if you can either program a click that gets faster and slower. I firmly believe in that. I don't think things being rigid is the way to go. But then again, I think you need to have a really firm time reference. If you're going to make a tight record, I think you need, unless you have incredible musicians who are all playing at once and are right on it. If you're layering things up, you need to have some time reference. So with Jackie's record, we did acoustic tracks, and then I mapped it out. So I wasn't moving his guitar. I was moving the time. What do you call it?
Yeah,
the ruler.
Move.
Yeah.
Did you do that manually, or did you?
I did it manually. In Logic, there's a way that you can automate the tempo.
Yeah.
By dragging beats, so you can beat match it, and it matches the tempo to the audio rather than the other way around. So we did that, and then I had a click to play. I had a timeline to line things up against for editing, and I had a thing to play against. So the bass and the drums were done over the electric guitar, and that's worked quite well. I did a record quite a while ago for a solo guitar player and singer called James Reynard, and he worked so much better having drums that weren't on the record in his headphones. So what I did for that is I tended to find a loop. Find a nice old school loop that's got a bit of a groove to it, and give him that in his headphones, and then he was awake and motoring away, and then you don't have it on the record, so you've got this guitar part that's got a really funky, because he's in that kind of Martin Carthy, picky thing, so he's got this really grooving acoustic guitar part, and it's because he had a funk drum loop going in his ears, and that seemed to work better because he just had something to play with, he had something to drive him along.
That's gone.
So
that's a top tip. That really.
Yeah, I don't know if I thought of that myself or whether I nicked it from somebody. I might well have.
It seems to me like you might be a bit of a Lindsey Buckingham fan from Fleetwood
Totally,
Mac.
yeah.
Just from your guitar playing style and so
No,
on.
definitely.
So yeah, what you've actually included Big Love on the new record.
Yeah.
So
Just
tell us about that. Why and
well, it's because I had a banjo.
Yeah.
I bought this banjo. I'm not really a banjo player, but I got a banjo to do some tracking, and I was playing this riff, and I thought, I know what that is.
Yeah.
So that track all came together very fast because it seemed like a good idea. But I'm a huge Lindsey Buckingham fan because he represents a style of electric guitar playing. There's a thing that Joe Boyd, the producer Joe Boyd, said about Richard Thompson, that he's the only electric guitarist that's never betrayed his whiteness. And what he means by that is that Richard's playing is rooted entirely in kind of European jazz and Scottish music and Irish music and Morris tunes more than it is in blues.
Yeah.
And I think Lindsey Buckingham has a bit of that. I guess he's the bluegrass equivalent.
Yeah, there's that
but
kind of
I think for somebody like me to try and be bluesy,
Yeah.
though I've listened to a lot of blues and there's a lot of it in my guitar playing, and I would never kind of consciously exclude it, but it's trying to find other routes in, because that's where folk rock records really, that's where that folk rock style really derailed itself, I think, of trying to be funky or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there's something about having a groove and having a really good sounding atmosphere to the record, but you don't have to be bluesy or funky. You can, there's that feel is in British folk music just as much as it is in blues.
Yeah. It's more of an open feel.
So yeah, it's trying to be reflects the things that I, be an electric guitar player that plays traditional music is a thing that you still have to construct because there aren't that many people who do it. But Lindsey Buckingham is quite a good role model for guitar playing, I think. So I've listened to a lot of him and Richard Thompson and there's a few people that are kind of have a different way through. There's quite a lot of Nashville players as well. The other player that no one's heard of that I'm a really big fan of is there's a Canadian artist called Kathleen Edwards, kind of old country artist from Ottawa in Canada, and I'm a huge fan of all her records. And her husband, stroke guitar player, stroke producer for a few years was a man called Colin Cripps, and his guitar playing on those Kathleen records he played on is amazing, and that's sort of an angrier, younger Richard Thompson.
Right.
But she always has great guitar players. She's got a guy called Gord Tuff who plays with her now, and Jim Bryson who played on the first record. But that stuff is the stuff I'm into.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that. But yeah, Big Love was a good one.
In terms of his production styles as well. I mean, he's like an old school tape guy.
He is. But he's quite spontaneous as well, I think. That documentary on the making of Rumours, where he's playing drums on the back of a chair for was it second-hand news?
Yeah.
All of that I love, and that's I can see where I've got a lot of that from.
Yeah, because I think your production style is certainly, we're talking about the sort of delays and reverbs and things, and the sort of sparkly crystalness of the.
I think that style of production. I mean, production-wise, I'll tell you my Hugh Padgham story in a second.
Right.
But I think a lot of those producers have had a really bad rap. I think because it was so successful, that kind of Ken Calais that did Rumours and Hugh Padgham and people like that, it's kind of got. I don't know. There was a bit of a reaction against. Music that gated reverbs and those kind of things. But I think there's a big place for them. Within reason. So yeah, delays and reverbs being my thing. Those Tango in the Night.
Yeah.
Really, I guess we're talking about Fleetwood wise. It must have been.
Yeah.
Might be earlier than that. I don't know.
Cracking.
But some of the sounds of that, snare reverbs and vocal treatments. Are a big, and also, I mean, mentioned Hugh Padgham. Also, all the Peter Gabriel things. His voice always had a really unique thing, especially those first 4 records. Kind of chorus delays or chorus reverbs on voice. I'm a big fan of, and that seems to have come out of fashion. So I'm kind of subtly sneaking it back, and it's very out of place for folk music as well.
Well, I guess that's sort of the shtick, the niche thing that you're working in. Who would you like to work with then?
Well, this is the thing. My Hugh Padgham story is years ago. After my first record, I had a year or so of about a year of doing meetings with A&R people, and there was an A&R guy that the only time I've ever been to the Groucho Club, an A&R man for Polydor, I think, took me to the Groucho Club, and he said. Because I kind of fell into production in a way because I produced the demos for my first record, and then I did try working with some other producers and that, and it didn't really work out. So I did the record myself, and I was 20 at the time, so that record never got redone. And then I think everybody assumed that I was someone who produced myself, and I think I would have liked to have worked with other people. And he said, this A&R man said, "Is there anybody you'd like to work with, production-wise?" in trying to stress the resources his company had. And I said immediately, Hugh Padgham, and he went, "What, the McFly man?" And at that point the meeting was sort of over, because his contempt for Hugh Padgham as being the man that did McFly, and my thing of thinking, we're not on the same page here, this is not going to work.
Those records sound good.
But yeah, I mean, people I'd love to work with, I think the people everybody wants to work with, really.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, I guess I've been trying to emulate the things that Paul Epworth does on the recent things, and I would love to work with him. Though obviously, if everyone wants to work with him, it's more trying to learn things from records, I suppose. Hugh Padgham, love to work with. Steve Lillywhite, I guess, other things. I've got those. Those are my tastes, really. I mean, closer to home, there's a guy that did. I'm a big fan of June Tabor.
Yeah. Because you toured with Oyster Band.
I did tour. I toured with Oyster Band. That was one of the first big things I did.
Yeah.
So that was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I toured with Oyster Band, and there's a producer called John Ravenhall that worked on June's records of the period, and I gather he did other 80s-y things. He might have done The Cure or Susie and the Banshees or someone like that. But that has a very particular chorused reverb thing. But kind of grand pianos with this huge long reverb, but it sounds brilliant. Kind of shimmery. Yeah. It might even be some kind of lexicon, non-linear program.
Yeah.
But those sounds are great. So I mean,
there's some cracking, sparkly ones on the old Eventides.
Yeah, I mean, and the Peter Gabriel stuffs.
Yeah.
How was his name? Kevin Killen. I love the sounds on those records. So I mean, there's people I'd like to work with, but I think being realistic, it's more like listening to the records and deconstructing what they're doing and trying to bear it in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I have worked with a few people that I really. I mean, John Astley, the mastering engineer. I've had a few things mastered by him. He's been very good with kind of advice, really. I've listened to mixes. He mastered a record of mine that was called Low Culture. And it was very good of him, because I came to master it, and he listened and went, "This record isn't finished yet. I won't charge you. Come back to me in a month."
Right.
And it was really good to have someone to say that, because I think at the time I'd spent so much time with either people nodding their heads and saying, "Yeah, whatever you do is going to be great," and I've never had that kind of external feedback, and that kind of support structure for young engineers and producers is possibly missing a bit these days. Yeah. So having somebody a bit older to say, "Very good, but this record isn't finished," was pretty important, I think.
So who does your mastering now mostly?
Well, these days I'm very lucky to have a guy called Nick Cook do it. But Nick has mastered quite a lot of folk things recently, but he plays in my band. Yeah. And then he dropped out of my band because he got his dream job, which was trainee mastering engineer, for a library music company in London, first of all, and now he works for Sony in their library music department. But as a result, he kind of masters these things on the side, and that was good, because Skulk was mastered a track at a time, going backwards and forwards. So I'd send him a mix, and he'd tweak it and send it back, and there was always a chance to revise the mix and send it. And so some of them were mixed and mastered and kind of evolved that way. So it was mastered in 6 months a track at a time, and that was quite helpful, because having another pair of ears to trust as well was really good.
Because you mix in your home studio mostly.
Mix at home.
But you also work at do some projects at J&J.
Yes. I tend to go in there for a couple of days. The Belfast Feast record was all done in J&J.
Right.
So that, but J&J is owned by Jim Barr, who is the bass player in Portishead.
Yeah.
But he also is the bass player in a jazz group called Get the Blessing, who are with Clive Deamer, who now plays in Radiohead.
Right.
Second drummer in Radiohead. But Clive is kind of Bath, Bristol studio legend. He's played with everybody really, Tom Jones, Robert Plant onwards.
Right.
But Jim is a fantastic engineer in his own right, and started the studio and built it with his bare hands. So that's my favourite studio in Bristol, I think.
Yeah.
But I tend to go in now to do drums or strings or use
yeah,
their grand piano.
You did sort of an orchestral thing on Skulk, didn't you? Why was that recorded?
Not on Skulk, in Modern History.
Right.
But that was done in Leeds. That was
Right.
done at the Opera North.
Right.
Opera North have a new bass called, what was it called? I guess it's on Opera North.
Right.
The Howard Assembly Rooms, I think
Okay.
it's called. But that was the Opera North Orchestra. And they were very lucky to... Well, sorry, they were lucky. I was very lucky to have them for a day. Very lucky. But actually, Andy Bell helped me with that. So Andy engineered that.
So was that with the sort of in-house mics and so on?
No, that was Andy's mics.
Right.
That was Andy's mics. Andy trained doing location classical recordings, so he's got all the kit. So that was Sherps, Omnis, some TLM 193s. Is that right? Would it be those? No. Anyway, Transformers Neumanns.
Yeah.
And Focusrite Pre's. So it was kind of Decca Tree type thing with things.
Okay.
So, and I had a lucky eBay find years ago. One of my key things that I use is a Soundfield Mark IV. Old Soundfields. I use it a lot of things. Yeah. So we tried my Soundfield, but Andy reckoned it was too noisy because those Soundfields tend to be a bit hissy. When I was at college, the studio had a Soundfield Mark IV, exactly the same, and that was hissing as well. So I think it's just a thing.
Right.
But no, that was Andy's mics.
But sort of onto drums.
Yes.
How do you track your drums? Because you mentioned on Skull.
Soundfield these days. Trade secrets now. because some of the drums for Skulk were done in J&J, played by Daisy Palmer, who's the drummer in Golf Rap. So that was done with their kit, but that was mid and side overheads, which is I went through a period, slightly coming out of it now, of using mid and side for everything.
Yes.
Do you know that Bruce Sweden, the Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones engineer?
Yeah.
That if you look at Thriller, it says recorded in, it's called Ambisonics, something like that. And Ambisonics is just tracking everything in stereo, basically. So I tried to do that. I did a period of everything was a single point source, but mid and side. Yeah. So you've got no phase problems, but everything has variable width, if you see what I mean. So acoustic guitar, violins, any acoustic instruments. I tried to do one point, so there was no phase, never any phase problems, but you could control the width in the mix. Yeah. So that was a thing I was trying to do. So I got into using mid and side overheads for that. But when I do it in my bedroom, because it's not the livest room in the world, it tends to be Soundfield overhead for most of the sound, kick and snare mics, and then kick and snare samples. Yeah. So slight samples, but a bit of 50-50 of. So it's mainly coming from the Soundfields, and then with extra kick and snare samples, because I couldn't get those sounds at home. It's just not something I could do.
Yeah. We talked about using delayed mics, sort of ambient mics.
That's my
which
new
is something
thing.
I do as well in a slightly different way. But you were how do you engineer that?
Because so I used to rent a studio in Bristol. I mean, it was warehouse space with all my gear in it. It wasn't treated or anything. I treated it myself with some rock wool in some bags. But I used to rent that, and then I gave that up and moved. When I bought my flat, it had a loft conversion. Right. So I converted the loft into the studio. So it's a big, long, the eaves of the roof. So it's kind of got an apex in the middle of the roof. But to get it balanced, it's a very dead space because it's very small and it's very treated. So it's quite even these days, but it's certainly got no ambience to it. So for doing drums there, and I've been trying to do it for other things as well, what I've got into doing is sticking a room mic as far away as I can get it, which you just get, I guess, a less in focus sound, and then having that as a reverb sound, rather than taking reverb, sending it to Altiverb
Right.
or Space Design
Yeah.
or your convolution reverb, instead of sending it from the close mics, which is the bit which tends to make it sound a bit wrong, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's
So
why they don't quite sound right. Trying to take a mic from 10 foot away and then feed the Altiverb room from that.
Yeah.
So
So it's like a 10 millisecond pre-delay, but a different tone as well, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's 10 second pre-delay, but also with acoustic instruments, they kind of come into focus a distance
Yeah.
away.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, acoustic guitars. I suppose everybody knows that half an inch can make all the difference.
Yeah.
But that changes the further away you get.
Yeah.
So trying to take a close mic and blend it with a fake room mic
Yeah.
that's the whole whole instrument or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, it works for fiddles as well because string instruments seem to project a bit.
close up, aren't they?
So I haven't done any cellos or kind of lower instruments there yet, but I'll probably do it next time.
Yeah.
But for those, that tends to be DPA omnis.
Right.
Either one in mono feeding the room,
Yeah.
the convolution, or a stereo.
Right.
So spaced omnis.
Right.
Yeah, mainly because my sound field tends to be a close mic these days.
Right.
Because the sound field is, what it's really good at is if you stick it on the figure of 8 patterns,
Yeah.
the null of the figure of 8 is obviously in, for both,
Yes.
you can get a nice stereo source, and
Yeah.
the null, so for singing guitarists you can get a really good rejection of the vocal and get a nice stereo.
Okay. But you use MS technique on guitars.
If I'm tracking them on their own, if they're not singing at the same time.
Weren't you saying you use in a different manner? So you do
Oh,
strings per string, MS per string.
I had a proper like something hitting me in the face realisation of I've been doing stereo instruments wrong all this time. I read an interview with the guy that does Alison Krauss's records, who's called Gary Paxoza, and he does a stereo pair of small diaphragms. But instead of getting his acoustic guitar that way, which is
So
the
you've
way
got your
you'd
guitar there,
think.
yeah.
His point is, but you don't, there's no stereo spread that way. Do it on this axis. So you want the bass to come one side and the treble to come another, like a piano. And it was like a proper. I read that and went, of course, that's so simple and so obvious. So yeah, I do guitar with mid and side, but with the axis of the figure of 8, with the null that way rather than that way.
Yeah.
So it's not picking up your hands; it's picking up the treble and bass, and all of a sudden you get a very coherent. I mean, with mid and side, you get a very kind of coherent centre. So the centre of your record is really nice and defined, and you get a really just a nice subtle spread of the acoustic, and it fills out the sound, and it sounds great on headphones, and it sounds great on speakers, and it doesn't sound fake. It doesn't sound like a massive wide acoustic guitar. It just sounds right, and so I do that on violins as well. I do it on other instruments.
Oh, so your different strings on a fiddle.
Yeah, so I try and put the axis that way. I mean, that doesn't work quite so well.
Yeah.
But still, it's good to have the spread. So it's actually, I mean, my go-to, and it works on melodians and accordions as well.
I was going to ask you how you deal with boxes.
Well, what it is it's an old Cal Rec. I think it's been refurbished by the people who own Cal Rec now, who I think is Hebden Sound.
Yeah.
But I got a lucky eBay find. So it's I guess early 80s Cal Rec one, so I think it's got BBC engraved.
Yeah.
But it's had the circuitry upgraded, and it's my magic mic for those things.
Right.
So it's a bit like a KM84 type sound, but with really low self noise.
Yeah.
So that has a Bayer ribbon, figure of 8 ribbon, that
Right.
just sits in a little holder above it.
Right.
So those two together tended to be the thing. But melodians and accordions, the thing that I think a lot of people do wrong, because the sound fires out of each end, bass one side, treble the other side, but no one ever listens from side on, is they're so bright and brash that melodians for quite a long time on folk records ended up being really buzzy and bright, but they don't sound like that if you're in front of them. And I think it's because you're meant to listen to them off axis. So what I tend to do is do the mid and side that way, but instead of looking directly into it, the key thing is I come from 45 degrees. So it dulls it a bit, because accordions and melodians for me, I should be like a Hammond organ kind of thing. It's not giving all the top, You know, the fingers of your acoustic guitar or the bow noise of the fiddle at the top end.
Yeah.
The melodeon is all of the kind of upper mid meat of it.
Yeah.
So I try and EQ them and record them so they're filling out lower down the spectrum.
Right, okay. So how
so
do
that's
you do
probably a trademark thing of mine as well.
Right. Yeah, I suppose having listening to yourself.
I mean, I showed that to Andy, and Andy does that on records now, which I'm
yes.
quite proud of.
Yeah. I mean, what about key noise?
Yeah, also they get a bit clattery. I like a bit of that in it.
I was going to say, how much is too much?
Just enough to make it sound real.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have it in, and also the bellows creak. Creak sometimes. That's quite important.
What about bass side? Do you clip on or?
No, I do. If I'm recording Nick, who's my master engineer, but plays melodeon for me. Nick has internal mics fitted to his box, and I really love the internal mic of his left hand. So what that is I think it's part of a P&M mic.
Right.
It's like the capsule out of that, but it's actually inside.
Right.
So it's really closed off. You get a really isolated bass, and it's a jack socket out. So just DI that.
Yeah. And it's consistent then.
And it's consistent in volume, but it just has a really nice. It's thick, and it has some kind of subharmonic to it that gives it real thunder. But because if you've got those frequencies there, it's not boomy, but it does have a very very deep subharmonic-y sound because it's resonating in the chamber, I suppose. But if you've got that sound there, you can always roll it off.
Yeah.
But it's good to have. Yeah. So I tend to DI his bass, or just large diaphragm condenser, a bit away, but that's what I record Saul with. Right. Just large diaphragm condenser. I've tried doing omnis on bass clipped on and so on, but it's never quite right. I'd rather get something rich and do that. But I think it's more the treble off axis thing.
Right. So that's they're playing around here. Do you think that works with piano accordions as well?
I think it does. Yeah. I mean, piano accordions obviously have a bigger spread, so the stereo will probably be a bit more pronounced. I mean, in terms of key noise, it is an important thing. Because there's, sorry, I'm just name dropping away through this. The Chad Blake has a thing. Chad Blake, I quite like some of his recordings, and apparently the way he does acoustic guitars is he has a little lavalier mic that he just sticks inside the guitar and tapes. Right. And the nice thing about that is you get the sleeve of someone, you get all of the clothes brushing up against the back of the guitar and all the little rattles, and they're not loud, but they just make it sound like a performance. And that all helps for folk records especially, I think. Yeah. So some of the tracks on Skulk with that as well I take to the inside to try it. It's not in the mix a lot, but on Lord Douglas especially that's in there. Right, okay. Yeah.
What do you do with concertinas? Either way? Or?
That would have been the DPA Omnis.
Right.
The
else in front or?
Off axis again.
Okay.
I mean, but that's for the Omnis. That's more big to get them out of the way.
Is that English or Anglo?
It's a McCann duet.
Right. Okay.
So treble one side, bass the other.
Okay.
The DPAs, when I bought them, I was a little bit disappointed because I was so used to that cowl rec, and I kind of thought, the DPA Omnis, I'll be really good, and I got them, and I listened back, and it was really disappointing, and then I realised that that's what the guitar sounds like.
Yes.
I've recorded exactly what it sounds like, and the thing about the cowl rec is it's quite flattering and it sounds better than real life. So the DPAs don't work on everything. Right. If you need to flatter a source, they're not the things to use. But concertina, banjo, they're very good for. Yeah. They record banjos completely flat. That's great. So they're just, I think they're the cheapest. I mean, they're not cheap, but the cheapest ones DPA do. So I think they're called 1491s or something like that. They're little. They've got a little point on them.
Yes.
Yeah, those ones. I'm just trying to find new things to do. It's a bit of a crossroads for me as an artist as well, because when I came along there was an old guard and there weren't then that many people in the middle, and I was new kid on the block, and now there's lots of young new artists, including people who I was, my records were before their time. There's 18-year-olds who were 7 years old when my first record came out, and think of me as being establishment. So having that shift into being an folk establishment figure is quite interesting. But it does bring with it some other stuff. So there's a few records that I would really like to do. there's people that I would love to produce, especially in folk things. I'd love to do a June Tabor record.
Right.
Though she's just done a record with ECM, so as a fan,
Yeah.
I think that's probably going to be pretty good. I'd love to work with Martin McCarthy. I'd love to work with Eliza. I'm doing some live stuff with Eliza next year.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do some recording, though it's all a bit up in the air.
Right.
But if we do that, I really want to make Eliza make a good trad record, because I think it's the thing that she is. Eliza Carthy is probably the best interpreter of traditional song of her generation, but it's not something that she's done for 10 years.
After all,
she's been off doing her own songwriting and going down a very esoteric path, but she's still the best interpreter of traditional material that I can think of. So I think she needs to make another trad record, and I really want to make it with her. Yeah. There's a few things in the pipeline that I want to do, but I really, I just want to make music with new people. Yeah. So,
excellent.
Cool.
So how do they find out about you? How do they contact you if they?
Well,
I've there's a talented folk band
on my website, just drop me an email. I'm not too hard to find on the web. jimmurray.co.uk. Jim@jimmurray.co.uk is me, or the website's there. But yeah, just.
Well, thanks for joining us and taking the time.
No, thank you very much for having me. I mean, I'm a big fan of the website, so thank you very much for having me on it. It's always nice to talk about things that you actually like to watch as a viewer.